You clicked on this video because the views in the title are very similar to the actual views of this video. They may even be exactly the same. And you're probably wondering how exactly I did this. Well, a while back I saw a video by Tom Scott where he did this exact same thing. I'll link the video in the description. It's a really good video, but he doesn't talk at all about how he does this concept. So I figured I would dig into how this actually works and show you exactly how I made this effect. Let's get started now. But first, are you looking to become a freelancer? Or maybe you're already freelancing, but not earning as much as you would want? Well, you need to check out the complete freelance bundle, which I'm going to have linked in the description below, because this course covers everything you need to know about freelancing to go from an absolute freelance beginner to someone making a full-time income from freelancing just from this one single course. They're going to cover everything you need to think about, from actual development stuff all the way to the more nitty-gritty business-minded pricing stuff, which most of us really don't like to think about. So I highly recommend you check out this course and use the code WDS20 to get 20% off the full course. And if you do buy with my link in the description, I'm going to get a portion of the sale, which directly helps out the channel and lets me make these free videos for you. Welcome back to Web Dev Simplified. My name's Kyle, and my job is to simplify the web for you so you can start building your dream project sooner. So if that sounds interesting, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this one. Now, to get started, you need to go to the YouTube Data API, which I will link down in the description below, but if you just search YouTube Data API, this is the page that's going to pop up for you. And as soon as you get here, the very first thing that you want to do is you're going to need to go to Get Started. This is going to be where all the documentation is for getting the credentials that you're going to need in order to update the title of a video. So as you can see, we have quick start guides on the left side here, and we want to use Node.js because we're going to be writing a Node script, which is going to do all of this for us. So if we click Node.js, scroll down a little ways, it just says you need to have Node installed, the Google account, access to the internet, pretty basic stuff. And we're going to get to the very first step. And this is going to be setting up an account with Google so that you can use the YouTube API. Because essentially this project is formed out of 3 different steps. The first step is setting up your actual project so you can access the API. The second step is going to be setting up your account so that you can access your specific YouTube videos and update the title of those videos. So I need to link my YouTube account to this project that I just created. And then the third step is using that account to actually query the API that YouTube gives you in order to get the views and then update the title of the video. So essentially 3-step process, and the first step is going to be getting the actual project set up. So we can just use this wizard, which is really nice. It's built in. We just click this link, and this here brings us to a page where we can create and set up our very first project. So we're going to create a project and we'll click continue here. And this is going to take a little bit of time. So I'm going to come back to you when this finishes. And there we go, our project was created. And now with that created, we need to set up our credentials in order to get our actual OAuth token, which we can use to authenticate our account. So it's saying we want to add credentials for this YouTube Data API. We want to call it from other UI. And this step is really important. Make sure you specify other UI because the only thing we're using this for is to actually get our credentials. So it's going to be essentially a command line interface we're going to use. And now down here, we want to access particular user data. So make sure you select user data and click what credentials do I need. This is going to say that you need OAuth credentials, so we're going to set up an OAuth consent screen. So we'll click Setup Consent Screen. And now with that done, we can choose whether this is internal or external. You're just going to need to make sure you choose external because you don't have a G Suite account. Click Create. And then inside of here, all we really need to do is give our application a name. We'll just say YouTube Video Title Updater, like that. And that's pretty much everything that we need to do. We don't have to worry about any of this other stuff for now, so we'll just click Save. And it's going to save, give us our OAuth consent screen, which is perfect. Now the next thing we need to do is go back to this credentials wizard, and here we need to set up our OAuth 2 client. And we can give it whatever name, we'll call it other client 1, that's fine. And then just click this refresh button here. That's going to be saying that we can now create our OAuth client ID. And when we do that, it's going to give us these credentials. And these credentials are something that you're going to want to keep safe and secure. So make sure that you don't spread them all over the place. You're not going to be able to use my credentials because I'm going to delete them after this video, but make sure you keep your own personal credentials safe and secret. So now we can just download those credentials by clicking download here. I already have a folder open up for our project, so we can just save that into that project, and then we can click done. Now with that done, we have everything we need done for this OAuth client to be set up. So now we actually need to authenticate ourselves with that client to get our own special secret tokens that we can use in order to authenticate my own YouTube account. So to do that, let's go over to this starter guide again. We've essentially done this entire step 1 already. So now we move on to step number 2, which we need to install the libraries we're going to use for this project. So luckily I have that folder open up over here inside of Visual Studio Code. As you can see, we have our client secret right here, which remember, you want to keep this secret. And we're going to create a new file called server.js. This is going to be where we authenticate ourselves. And then also, I'm just going to run npm init-y. That's going to get us a package.json. And now we can run these 2 commands to install these 2 different libraries. So let me just paste that into my terminal here, and it's going to take a little bit to run and install those libraries. And while that's happening, let me talk about what step 3 is, which is just a really basic setup to authenticate ourselves with OAuth. What this code does is it essentially gives us a prompt to authenticate ourselves with the OAuth client, actually log into our YouTube account, and then get back a token which we can use to essentially authenticate ourselves without having to log in every single time. So all we need to do is copy all of this code, and we're going to put it inside of server.js. Let me just make this a little bigger so we can see what we're working with. And it's quite a bit of code here, but you don't really need to understand what's going on. All of this is written for you, and it's just so we can get that token. The main important thing we want to do is right here, we want to change this from read only to force-SSL. This will allow us to actually update things instead of just read them, which is really important. And then here, we just want to save our token inside of our local folder. So we're going to get rid of this whole token directory thing like that. And if we search for token directory, you can see down here, we're creating a folder for it. We don't need to do that anymore. So let's just delete that as well. So now with all of that done, we essentially said that we want to create a token, which is going to allow updates, and we're going to save it inside of our current folder to a name like this, youtube-nodejs-quickstart.json. So let's run. So we'll just say node server.js, and we're going to run this, and it says error loading client secret file. It couldn't find client_secret.json. So if we look over here, this is called client ID.json. We're going to rename this to secret.json. And remember, all of this I'm going to delete afterwards, so you're not going to be able to use my own credentials here. You're going to need to get your own. Next thing that we need to do here, after that's done, is just come down, rerun this, and you should see it says authorize this app by visiting this URL. So we're just going to go to this URL. And from here, I just need to select the account that has my YouTube profile. So that's this one right here. And it's going to say I want to select my YouTube account, which is this one. And when I do that, it's going to say that this app is not verified. This is perfectly okay. This is just Google warning you, hey, we haven't looked at this app that we just created a couple minutes ago and verified it's legit. Since we're using this just for ourselves, just click advanced and click go to YouTube video title updater. That's perfectly okay. And when we click on this link, it's going to say, do you want to allow this app, this project that we just created, to essentially completely control my entire YouTube channel? And all you need to do is say, yep, that's okay, and click allow. And once you do that, you're going to be greeted with this code right here. Just make sure that you copy this code, and we're going to paste this down into here where it says enter the code from that page. So we paste that in, hit enter, and what that's going to do is actually store our token inside of this file here, which contains all of our token information. And again, I'm going to be deleting this after this video, so you won't even be able to use this token. You're going to need to make sure to get your own token. This token is what allows us to authenticate my YouTube account with the API and actually update my videos and so on. So now with all of that done, we can finally move on to actually creating the code that's going to update my YouTube video title based on the number of views that that video has. So in order to do that, let's heavily modify this server.js. We no longer need to read from files or actually print out to the console, so we can remove all of that code. We just want our OAuth code here. We don't need any of this information for our scopes and such, delete that. We can completely delete out all of our loading the client file. We don't need to worry about any of that. Down here we have our authorize function, which we're actually going to keep. We're going to need this authorize function, but we're going to just have the credentials already be in here. And instead of using callbacks, we're going to make this asynchronous. So we can just get rid of all of that. We're going to return a promise from here instead. So right here, we're creating our OAuth 2 client. This is important because we need this in order to actually call the APIs that Google has set up. So really all we need to do is make sure that we have this OAuth 2 client and set our credentials. So we can get rid of all of this other code around the credential setting because all we care about is actually setting our credentials here, as you can see, and we're going to set them to our token, which we're going to get to in a little bit. And the last thing to do here is just to make sure we return that OAuth 2 client. just like this. So now we have our authorize function completely done, and we're going to fill in the blanks for our credentials and our token in a little bit, but we're going to clean up this code some more. We don't need anything down here for getting our new token or getting the channel. We can delete everything else. Really, the only thing that we kept around is this single authorize function, and we heavily modified it since we already know what our credentials are and we already know what our token is. Now, the next thing to do is go back to the YouTube API over here. Let me expand my screen. And what we want to do is scroll all the way down to the very bottom where we have this API Explorer. Click on this, and this is going to be essentially the entire YouTube API. And all we care about is this videos section down here, and we want to go to the list because we want to get a single video. And unfortunately, the only way to do that is through a list. So if we scroll down, you can see that we have this use case for list by video ID. And this is what we actually want to query. So if we just come down here a little ways, you can see that our URL is going to be this. And if we scroll down a little further, we need to specify a part, and we can also specify the ID of a particular video in order to query. So part is essentially like what information do you want to know? It could be any of these different things. And for us, we just want the statistics. That's going to give us views, likes, and that kind of stuff. So we want to get the statistics part, and we want to get it by a single ID. And luckily, this Google API right here has a lot of really nice handy methods we can use to query this a lot easier than actually having to manually write out all of these individual URLs like this. So let's create a new function inside of here. And we're going to call this get video views. And we're going to pass it in our authentication. This is going to be this OAuth 2 client here. We're going to pass it into our get video views. And inside of here, first thing we want to do is get our service for querying our particular YouTube API. That's just equal to google.youtube. And we want to get the v3 API. That's the most current API at this time. And then inside of here, we're going to actually query that API, which is going to be asynchronous. So we're going to do that inside of a promise. We're going to turn a new promise, which is going to have inside of it resolve and reject. And inside of here, we're going to query this service by saying service.videos.list. And this is the actual function that calls this API URL right here, the videos.list. And inside of here, we can pass a bunch of different options. So as I mentioned, we need to pass in the part, which is going to be statistics. So we can just say part is going to be statistics, just like that. And then we also need to pass in our ID for a particular video. And I already have a sample video uploaded on my channel here, just called test video, and I gave it a few views by just refreshing the page a bunch. And this ID is up here inside of the URL. So let's copy that ID over into our ID field over here. So now we're getting a particular part and we're getting the ID. The last thing we have to do is pass in our authentication by just passing in our OAuth client, which we're passing in here, into our list down here. Now the second parameter to this list function is going to be just a function, which is going to take in an error and a response here. Whoops, just like that. And if we have an error, for example, all we want to do is just print out that error with a reject. So we can say return reject error, just like that. And if we don't, what we want to do is return our response. For now, we're just going to console.log our response.data.items. This is going to be the data portion of our response, and .items is going to be the list of all videos returned. So it should return just this one single video, and we're going to log that out. So let's save that. But before we go any further, we need to figure out how we're going to get this token and these credentials into our application. And the easiest way to do that is to use something called .env, which is a library that lets us use a env file to pull in these different environment variables. So we can just npmi .env, and that's going to download this library for us. And then we can create a file called .env. And in here, we want to put our different credentials. So we're going to come in and say our OAuth token is going to be equal to, and that's this right here. So just copy this entire thing and paste it in. Next, we're going to have our client secret, set that equal to this file. So let's just copy this entire file, paste it into here. And let's also put in our video ID as well. So we can just come into our server, make sure we copy that video ID and put it right here. And these are all of our different credentials that we need inside this one env file. Now to load those, all we need to do is at the very top of our page, just come up here and say require .env, and we want to call the config method. This is going to load everything from our .env file into our process.env variable. So we can say process.env.client secret, and that's going to be this client secret right here. So let's actually just do that. We know now that our const credentials is going to be equal to that client secret from that environment variable. We also know our video ID, so let's just create a variable called video ID, and we're going to set that to process.env.video ID. There we go, and our token, again, is going to be process.env.OAuth token, just like that, and it's matching this OAuth token inside of here. So now we are pulling everything from those environment variables and we're actually putting it into our code. And the last thing we have left to do is take our video ID and put it down here. So we'll say video ID. And lastly, let's just come down here and we're going to resolve our response.data.items, just like that. So it's going to be whatever we log out is what we return from this function. Now let's create a final function here, which we're going to call main. And this is going to be an asynchronous function, which is going to call authorize and then get our video views. So we can say const auth is equal to authorize. So it's just calling our authorize function and getting that client. And then we can say const video views is going to be equal to get video views. We get to pass in that auth. And we need to make sure that we await this because this is an asynchronous function here. As you can see, we're returning a promise. And we can also just wrap all of this inside of a try catch. So if we do happen to get any errors, we can actually catch those errors like this. And we can just, console.error out our error so we can see exactly what the problem was. So now everything that we have so far is complete. So let's try running this to see if everything works. We can just say node server.js and we're going to run this. And you can see nothing got printed out at all, so clearly something is going wrong. And obviously, as you can see, we created this main function, but we never actually called it. So let's call our main function, and now hopefully this should work. And we of course got an error, so let's scroll up and read what this says. It says cannot read property client secret of undefined. And of course, what happens with this is we're pulling in our process.env.client secret, but we're not actually converting this from a string to JSON, because inside of here, this is actually a string. It's converted to a string, so we need to take that string and parse it as JSON. So we can say json.parse to convert that string to JSON. So now it will save, and we're going to rerun this, and hopefully this time, fingers crossed, everything will work. And as you can see, we got printed out all of the details about the video. We have the thing that it is, the tag, the ID, and most importantly, statistics, which contains our view count. So let's come down here. We know we want to get our very first item, so we can say items of 0, and we want to get the .statistics portions of it, and we want to get the view count. That lines up with this view count we have right here. So now what we do is all the way up here, if we just console.log video views, save it and run, we should get 47 being printed out. And as you can see, we have 47 printed out. So the very last step that we have is to actually update our video title based on this view number. So let's go back to the Google APIs. We can see here we have our API documentation. Just expand this out, and we want to go to the update portion of our video. We're going to scroll all the way down here. Keep going, keep going. So again, we have a part that's required, and inside of this use case, we need to update the snippet because the snippet contains the title. And then we have all the way down here, request body, and here's everything we must provide. We must provide an ID, we must give it a snippet.title and a snippet.category ID. And this essentially tells you if it's an education video, a music video, a game video, whatever it is, this is the ID that you're going to use here. So these are the three things that we need to specify for our actual video. So let's go back here to our code and actually modify this in order to use those different portions we just looked at. So we'll create a function. We're going to call it update video title, and it's going to take in our authentication and the number of views because obviously we want to update it to contain the view count. And again, we're going to get our service. I'm just going to copy this from up here, and we're again going to return a promise. So I'll copy that down as well. Just like that. There we go. So now inside of the promise, we can call our service.videos.update. And inside of here, we need to pass a lot of the same stuff. We need our auth, and we need to pass our part. So we can say down here, our auth is equal to auth. Our part is going to be snippet, which we looked at inside of the API. And then the next thing that we need to pass inside of here is going to be what's called a resource. And this is essentially what we're going to be updating. So our resource contains the ID of the video we're going to update. So we'll say video ID. It's going to have that snippet portion, which as you remember over here, we need snippet.title and snippet.category ID. So we're going to need title, title, and category ID. Let me make sure that's the correct way. Yep. And the category ID for our use case is going to be 27. I just looked this up through YouTube. They have a different API for querying this, but 27 is educational, and this video is an educational video, so we're going to use 27. And you can find that yourself if you just go over here, video categories. You can query directly from this page right here and get all the different categories to figure out which one is the right one for your video. This is never going to change, so I'm just going to hard code that directly into the code. Now the next thing we need to do is set up our title. We're going to say this video has views, and instead of this portion here, we actually need to specify the number of views. And instead of just putting the views number like this, I actually want to format this with correct comma notation. So if it goes above 1,000, it'll say 1,00. So to do that, we're going to use internationalization. So intl.number format. And what we need to do is just pass in the actual format we want to use. In our case, we're going to use the US format. And we can call the format function and pass it in our views. And what this is going to do is it's going to format this number. So if our views, for example, were 1,000, it would be 1,00 instead of just 1,000. Now, just like in the other service video, we're going to have a second parameter here, which is going to be the actual function, which gives us our error and our response. And inside of here, if we have an error, we just want to, again, reject. So we're going to return reject of that error. Otherwise, we're going to return a response, or I'm sorry, resolve, which is going to be our response.data.snippet.title. And this is going to be what the new title of our video is. And we can come up here all the way up. And here we can just say const video title is equal to await update video title. We pass in our auth and our video views. And then we can just console.log our video title, video title right here. And hopefully if everything works, when we run this, we should get a new title being printed out into our console. This video has 47 views. And if I go to our test video and refresh, we should see our title update. So if I refresh, you see that our title says this video has 47 views. And we can even go a step further. And if I were to just manually pass in, for example, 10,000, we're going to have now 10,000 views. And if I run this, it should say that this video has 10,000 views. And when I refresh over here, you're going to see that number updates to 10,000 views. Now that is all great and all, but I don't really want to have to manually run this every single time that, my video views change. I want this to be automatic. So in order to make this automatic, what you need to do is deploy this to a server somewhere and set up a cron job. So over here on this second terminal, I'm actually SSH'd into my own server where I have this cron job set up. And all I did is I pulled in all of this code to this actual place here. And if I run cron tab -e, I can actually edit my cron tab jobs. And if I scroll all the way down, you're going to see this cron tab right here. Right now it's commented out, but essentially what this is going to do is it's going to go into the folder that contains my code, which I just have here. It's home Kyle video title updater. And then it's going to run node, which is this /user/bin node. And it's going to call my video title updater.js. And what this is going to do is it's every single time. So at minute 8, 17, 25, 34, 42, 51, and 59, this code is going to be run and actually update my video title. So essentially every about 9 minutes, the video title is going to update based on the actual view count of the video. And this is automatic. If I were to uncomment this, it would immediately start working. So you can use a cron job on a server in order to make this an automatic process, and it's going to update those views for you automatically without you having to manually run the file over and over and over again, because that would really suck. And that's how you create this amazing effect. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my other videos. They're going to be linked over here, and subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.